Okay, we are here. The Emmy Awards have just happened. Some huge upsets. Big night for the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Big night for the Game of Thrones, both taking out the top series awards. And boy, it was really, I'm still reeling a bit. We thought that maybe on the drama side, you'd have The Handmaid's Tale sweep things and then things to get divided up in the comedy side. We sort of had the script flipped on us, and we have Marvelous Maisel run through the comedy races practically untouched, aside from supporting actor. And then then drama series, Americans won a couple. Game of Thrones won a couple, including the big one. Westworld won one. The Americans won a pair. The Crown. Sorry, the Crown's on a single. That won a pair. And Handmaid's Tale, zip tonight.
Nothing.
Last year's
surprise.
Yeah. Rob, where do you want to kick things off?
Well, I think what you just said really kind of sums it up for me, because Handmaid's Tale went from sweep to nothing, and I don't know really how to explain that, because did you notice there wasn't a lot of political stuff this year? It was all about Me Too and women, and diversity was a massive theme this year. And I think they just kind of went with what they really love. Maybe Handmaid swept last year because there was a bit of Trump factor there or something. I don't know, but I am slightly underwhelmed with the Game of Thrones win. I love that show just as much as the next guy, but I kind of was hoping for the Crown to pull one off because I thought it was kind of gaining momentum, especially with that fantastic Claire Foy win. And yeah.
I was going to say, so when you say you love Game of Thrones just as much as the next guy, obviously not just as much as the Academy.
True. I was thinking that maybe after such a long absence that maybe the Academy might have moved on a little. And I didn't expect Game of Thrones to win anything tonight, but it did manage to win two pretty important ones. But I was so thrilled with some of those surprises. I love those, particularly someone like Regina King, who is obviously now, we must all recognize, just such an Emmy favorite. But if you've seen a performance in 7 seconds, you would realize that it was definitely a deserving win. But Claire Foy winning and Tandy Newton taking that one out against three handmaids, I guess maybe the vote splitting was kind of a factor after all, Matt, because we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, no, definitely. Tom, what are your thoughts? Toss.
It really, I was kind of underwhelmed by the show, but I liked a lot of the winners. Although I have to say, Glenn Weiss proposing to his girlfriend was the highlight of the show for me.
It was huge.
It was huge. It was lovely. It was really, really great. And it gave the show a bit of heart that it didn't otherwise have. I was most curious about the writing categories, and absolutely thrilled that the Americans won writing. I voted for it. I thought against the wind, and, because I'm an Emmy voter, and I was able to put in my ballot for that. And I thought, well, something else is going to win. But it was terrific that it did. And Matthew Rhys was the lovely surprise for me. I was hoping he'd win, but I didn't think he would, but he did, and that's great.
Yeah. It's interesting how you're saying, Rob, what changed between the Handmaid's Tale win last year, where they swept the night, and Game of Thrones ending up and then coming away with nothing tonight to Game of Thrones winning drama series. And I guess one factor we need to not discount is that Game of Thrones wasn't in the Emmy race last year. Like, that's the show that had won Best Drama Series 2 years before. It sat last year out, and it came back this year and won again. So, like, I sort of am wondering if Game of Thrones was in the race last year, Handmaid's Tale may have not done as well as it did and may have not ended up winning drama series. I think it still would have done better in the acting awards, so there definitely was a bit of a shift away from it. But I do think it sort of speaks to the Academy's fondness for Game of Thrones.
Definitely. And, I have to. You remember back last year when Colbert came out with all the handmaids, dancing handmaids, and it was very much in the zeitgeist. So yeah, maybe if Game of Thrones was in the competition, things might have been different. But my view is that it probably wouldn't have been because Handmaids was the show and it had just finished airing. It was based on a very famous and beloved book, and I think most people took to it. It was right at this time when the Me Too movement was really exploding, and there was a lot of anti-Trump sentiment. And I think it just was at the right time for it to just kind of take over. This year, I think that's kind of, we've moved on from that a little, I think. And there was, the talk this year was mostly for me about diversity, whatever that means. And I think that didn't necessarily reflect in the winners because there was a lot of winners that had really had nothing to do with diversity. I think it was just about what the Academy really, really loved. And that's cool. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and we've got the we'll update you with, this is the final Emmy board. Nothing can move now. All the awards are handed out. So we have Game of Thrones up on 9 wins for the year. Its record is 12, I believe. Something of note is that the long-standing record of The West Wing that held the record from about the year 2000, 2001, before Game of Thrones overtook it about 3 years ago, was 9. So 9 is a very impressive haul. I don't think any shows, any series other than Game of Thrones have been able to surpass 9 or to get 9 or more in the past. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel ends on 8, 1 behind it, which is like, you know, Game of Thrones is this Emmy behemoth. So not just amazing that Maisel was able to win comedy series and all these awards, but it won 8, which is like up on West Wing ER territory in their peaks. Yep. And then you've got The Crown had a late surge. It was able to get up to 5 over the Handmaid, which just was stuck on 3 all evening. Westworld moved up a little bit. On the comedy side, Atlanta and Handmaids, 2 of the big shows going into the night, they both win a combined total of 0 Emmys tonight. Barry did very nicely, picking up 2 to move up to 3. So it started the night on 1, was able to move up to Handmaids and Atlanta territory, as did Godless. Godless was able to pick up 2 acting wins to get it into 3 Emmy wins. Last week tonight moves up to 4. Black Mirror moved up to 4. Jesus Christ Superstar stayed on 5. Versace, American Crime Story, moved up to, I think, 7. And SNL moved up, just one, didn't win any acting awards tonight, just moved up that series award to win 8. And that is how the board looks. There you go.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yep. Matt, have you ever considered auctioning that board off? Because people would love that.
It's a new one this year. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm happy if people want to shoot me a message or something, and if the price is right, it can be yours.
Ah, you're welcome.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
I'll try to. So let's. Okay, I'm going to let you choose, Rob. Do you want to talk a bit about drama, comedy, limited, or variety reality?
I want to talk about reality for a sec, and I'll just, because it's not something that I would normally talk about. Before I do, I just want to say one thing, Matt. Netflix was the big nominee winner, and yet it still has not been able to win a series award. So Hulu has won 1, and Amazon has now won 1, but Netflix just can't seem to do it. That must be very frustrating for them. But putting that aside, it was very cool to see RuPaul finally win that prize tonight.
Yay.
Because we expected that to happen last year and The Voice won. A lot of us were expecting The Voice to repeat. Thankfully, I just went out on a limb and thought, okay, I think this is RuPaul's time. It was great to see that happen, and I love hearing from RuPaul. I think that RuPaul should host the Emmys. I think it would be very funny. It's really cool to see that happen, and I guess reality and variety are kind of lumped together at the Primetime Emmys. It was the variety, we didn't get a lot of surprises there, but again, I think they were all very deserving winners. I would eventually like to see Colbert win one of these, but
yes.
You know, I just think I'm happy that they're at least nominated. And one thing I've got to say as well, Matt, and then I'll stop talking, is I loved having all the clips. I know a lot of people had problems with the way that the categories were announced this year, with showing the clips and having someone come out and just announce the winner. I didn't mind it because we got to see the work. We never ever get to see the work. We just get to see people reading our names. And this was a nice way to kind of see what we're actually trying to honor. But with the variety stuff, could we actually see a bit more of it like we used to back in the day, or have the people put on little skits for the writing categories like they used to? Because it seemed like it was a bit rushed towards the end, and we're supposed to be entertained Emmys. And tonight it just felt like it was just like a never-ending cycle of just spitting out trophies at the audience, and we weren't actually being entertained. And I think we need that, because otherwise what's the point?
Yeah, no, I actually didn't mind the way, and I know some people weren't a huge fan, but I did like how they sort of announced the nominees before the presenters came out. Often presenters don't do a good job reading out the names anyway and things like that. So I thought that worked quite well. It's a shame we didn't get all the shots of all the nominees sitting in the audience, I don't think. So that was what you lost. But I wasn't as anti that as some might have been. Tom, any thoughts?
I wish that they had reiterated what the actor who wins was for. The winner is Merritt Weaver. For what? I forgot. I didn't see that a minute ago in the montage. Yeah. Please do that. Jeez. I'm with you.
Trying to appeal to a broad audience, people who aren't like us that are, memorizing and predicting and moving things up and down. People want to hear what show. There might be people who are big fans of a show don't even know the actors' names in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's so at least reiterate what it's for. That'd be one thing. I really agree with Rob in terms of, I loved those montages of the writing nominees. They'd be, hanging themselves and things like that. It was really wonderful, and it gave us an idea about who these people are and what this show is about. And I kind of miss that. It's just, reading of names. We got a lot of reading of names, and the writing people have been really terrific. Among memorable moments, I would probably say right off the bat, Henry Winkler.
Oh yeah, man, that brought me to tears. Loved it. Really loved it.
No, that was maybe for me the highlight of the night. Seeing the Fonz, who you got these iconic characters, but I actually think that was a great performance, the Fonz as well, and a really important part of television. It wasn't just leather jacket and catchphrases. I think what he brought to that role was really great. And I remember watching this season of Arrested Development, the new season, going, I think Henry Winkler's doing the best out of anyone on this show in the most recent season. And that's a good cast. And Barry, he's fantastic. And it was just so nice to see one of these iconic TV characters take home an Emmy. Andy Griffith never won an Emmy.
Yeah, that's right. So that's finally happened. Hey, Matt, what did you think about Colin, Jost, and Michael Che? Because I personally thought they were a little flat. I don't know. I was expecting more.
I didn't have huge expectations, but I wasn't someone who was expecting them to be horrible either. I had pretty neutral expectations heading into them hosting. I thought they were quite funny. I thought they were all right. I thought sometimes the back and forward was a little awkward, which can sometimes be the case when you got two hosts, like the sort of way they would sort of laugh or nod at each other's sort of thing. I thought the jokes were fine. I thought they landed pretty well. I thought a reasonable hosting gig. I like that they opened with a big musical number that didn't have them in, but had some of the other it gave it a real SNL sort of feel to it, and the guest star and I actually quite liked the opening number. I thought that was a good way to sort of comment on their diversity, but also commenting on how the problems in Hollywood haven't all been solved by acting like they had. So I thought that was sort of clever. And I think everyone, it was just, Andy Samberg was fun in that. And RuPaul was great in that. And, I thought that was a really fun opening. Probably not the best Emmy opening of all time, but I enjoyed it. I thought a good job done. What do you think? What did you think, Tom?
I thought it was pretty bland. I was hoping more from them. I think any edition of SNL Weekend Update was a lot sharper than any of the jokes they had there, and they had a lot of material. So I was kind of disappointed. Sorry.
And what about I was just thinking the Maya Rudolph and Fred Armisen stuff just was terrible.
Geez, no.
What on earth was that about? Like, that needed to be cut quickly.
Yeah. I mean,
I love those two guys.
these are two wonderful comics.
Yeah.
You throw them away on this stuff. Ugh.
Yeah, they weren't served well by the writing. Fred Armisen, I think, is one of the funniest people
Absolutely
alive, and the strength to his humor is he's really not punchline driven guy. He's just awkwardly funny in the most hilarious way. And maybe, I don't know, I would have liked to see him, maybe not even with Maya Rudolph, but with Carrie Brownstein doing that as well, like the Portlandia pair, maybe doing that. Though Maya Rudolph and him do stuff together too and things. So we've got some of the comments in the chat room. Jason Alette, did everyone have Maisel for comedy series? I know I did, but I don't think everyone did. Someone, Atlanta and Handmaid got no love. I'm kind of shocked. Someone, I can't see it, it's bumped up in the chat room, but someone did say Game of Thrones has it in the bag for next year, signed, sealed, and delivered the next Emmy. So, or at least for its final season. What, Tom?
I don't think so. I mean, no one has anything in the bag yet. So
yeah, the Emmys are fickle.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. Rob?
Sorry, I just, you cut out there for a second. I'm not sure what we're actually talking about, but I've got plenty of I was thinking, like, if you had to pick a winner, apart from Henry Winkler, which was obviously a great moment on the show, was there any particular winners that made you like get up or scream out loud? Because there was a couple for me. Like, obviously Claire Foy, I've been banging on about her for weeks, and I'm very glad that that finally happened. I was very happy about Regina King. I was very happy about Bill Hader, and there was a lot of wins tonight that made me kind of scream out loud, like The Crown winning directing. I wish Stephen Daldry was there to accept that. A lot of really positive things came out of tonight's Emmys. They're really paying attention. They're actually awarding things that really matter and that are deserving, in my opinion. And I just think that's a really nice thing to see.
Yeah, Tom?
I'm proud of my branch. I'm part of the writers' branch of the Emmy, and what I voted for didn't necessarily win, but that's okay. I did vote for Mrs. Maisel for writing, which is good, and I did vote for USS Callister.
Yeah.
And I guess I did okay.
And if those things won by one vote, Tom, you could have been the difference.
Thank you, Matt. I like that. And the writing victory that thrilled me the most was for The Americans.
Absolutely.
That is a brilliant script. Because I have to say, guys, I've not been a huge fan of The Americans. Not that I didn't like it, I just didn't watch it. Yeah. And in previous years, their writing submission for the Emmys was so convoluted I couldn't follow it. This was beautifully laid out. The episode start, and it's like, oh my God, now I know what people are saying about this. This is really good. Yeah. And that was my number one, and I'm so happy it won.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's not it was something we went in tonight knowing was very likely going to happen, but it was just so lovely to see Rachel Brosnahan win for Maisel, someone who this is her first sort of big TV lead role, and to see just how well she performed it, but also to see that sort of this season end with her winning the Emmy, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. For months I've been slightly anti-Maisel, only because I watched the first 2 episodes. I wasn't really into it. I gave up. And then yesterday I happened to be home and I had I watched the whole thing. I just binged it all while I was doing other stuff. But I was watching it and I really then understood why people love it. And then I really understood this is the kind of show the Academy will absolutely just eat up. And they did. It won 8 Emmys. Like, that's incredible. And not only is it funny and beautifully done and great writing, great acting, but it's so authentic in the way that it depicts that particular period. It reminds me of Mad Men a little. And that is absolutely within the Academy's wheelhouse. And I was predicting Atlanta for months, and which was not smart. Thankfully, I changed it a few days ago because, yeah, it just seems like it was a pretty deserving win, and I'm glad that it swept.
I changed it this morning. Thank God. But I mean, okay, Rob, what did your wife say? You spent the entire day watching Mrs. Maisel. My husband would have killed me if I did that.
Yeah, I think she probably wouldn't have been totally impressed. Thankfully, she was at work, so that always helps.
Very understanding wife.
Yeah, but it's really cool to see that happen. And I'm when Game of Thrones premieres, whenever it premieres its final season, we're all going to be all over that. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
And did you all think when Game of Thrones was announced by Kenan Thompson that oh well, that's going to win next year now as well? That was my first thought, was like, that's going to win next year. It's final season. It's already won it.
Well,
it's a huge hurdle that they had to do to get over Handmaid's Tale, because the Emmy voters, and I'm guilty of this, tend to repeat year after year. The last winner, okay, we'll vote that again and again. So the fact that they're back in the Emmy win category is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miguel Morello in the chat room. Sorry for probably mispronouncing your name. Says Game of Thrones is going to win again. That's a lock. It's a massive production. And MB says no cast member on Game of Thrones should go lead. They don't get enough screen time. Look, I think Game of Thrones is positioned very well for the next Emmys, and that will be interesting if they are able to win, because they will then join a very exclusive club of 4-time Best Drama Series winners. I believe those other shows are Hill Street Blues, LA Law, and The West Wing. So it will join an illustrious club if it is able to win for its final season. The couple of caveats I would add is, one, the final season of Game of Thrones, there are a lot of expectations. It might not meet them. We could have a scenario where there are a lot of complaints about how the show ends. So far, they've made a pretty good show to succeed. So I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt. But final seasons can sometimes go awry on TV shows. If it has an amazing, a Breaking Bad level final season, I think it's going to be very hard to stop. And then we don't know what the big alternate's going to be. Like, is it going to be Handmaids versus Game of Thrones again? Or is another show really going to just catch on and get a lot of steam? Will there be a new show in the mix? Will Better Call Saul is, I think, airing at a bad time to be super competitive next year. So it'll be interesting. Without most of the shows having aired, it's very hard to say. But I do think Game of Thrones is positioned well. I'd put them as the front runner for, I don't know, 5 Emmys time when the final season is.
Yeah, and apparently Handmaids may not even air for the eligibility periods. It may not even be around, but which it kind of just brings me to this. Like, I'm a big Handmaids fan, and I'm a little disappointed that it didn't win anything tonight. I was expecting it to win directing. I was expecting it to win supporting actress and drama series. It didn't win any of those. It's disappointing, and they must be feeling a little flat after last year just completely blowing everyone out of the water, and now they've just taken home 3 Creative Arts Emmys out of such a massive nominations haul. I'm particularly disappointed for Yvonne Strahovski. Matt and I, we're fellow Aussies, and so I was rooting for her quietly, and that didn't happen. But at least we got Tandy Newton winning, and that was a great surprise and very deserving. She's the MVP, in my opinion, from Westworld, and she looked just as shocked as everybody else.
And look, Yvonne Strahovski was great in Chuck. That was incredible. Yeah. And who else was there? She was fantastic, even in some rubbish seasons of Dexter. She was quite good in that. So she's a great actress. And Tom, you've got the hat on. You've dusted off
Westworld.
Yeah,
because Matt and I have had a lot of chats about Westworld. And
yes, season 1 we had a recap chat.
And we both had our hats on. So this is to you.
Yes. Tip of the hat to Tandy Newton, I would imagine. That's too, right?
Thank God. She's so good in that. Oh,
and I think a reason we probably didn't predict her as much this year, which is always a mistake at the Emmys, is because we thought she was so good last year and she didn't win. we're sort of like, well, she probably won't win this year if she didn't win last year, which isn't always the case at the Emmys. Sometimes it's on your second or third time that you end up taking out that first win.
The Emmys are so unpredictable. I mean, they're really tough. They're tougher than the Oscars.
Yeah. That's right. We can't rely on episodes anymore. That's the problem. And so this is a really tough awards show to predict.
Yeah. Although, look, if this was the old system with episodes, Tandy Newton would have been very much in the mix.
Oh, totally.
Like, and look, if you look at the upset wins, other than maybe Peter Dinklage, you look at those tapes. Like, Bill Hader's tape was incredible. Right. Tandy's tape was incredible. It's like there was some real, like, I wouldn't necessarily say that tapes didn't play a role at all, just based on some of the ones that were able to win.
It's interesting. Atlanta got stumped. Just
badly, really bad,
really badly, and they had good stuff to put up, and it didn't work.
Yeah. Do we have any theories as to what went wrong for Atlanta?
I don't know. It's just not. They just don't think it's funny enough, I guess. Last year, Donald Glover was able to pull it off and win, but I think that he was such an it factor, But he's an it factor now. I mean, he's Childish Gambino as well, and he had such a great presence on Saturday Night Live when he hosted. And Atlanta Robin season, I thought was much better than the first season. I just thought it was going to win something. I thought Teddy Perkins would have won directing at least, but. Maybe it was just the Maisel factor. Maisel just kind of railroaded everything else in its path apart from 2 Barry wins. Could it just be that alone? Like, Handmaids just killed everything last year, which doesn't mean last year that all the stuff wasn't very good. But when you've got one show that the voters just absolutely adore, like Maisel and Handmaids last year, everything else kind of suffers. I prefer it when shows kind of spread the wealth and they win a few here and there, like on the drama side tonight. That was really great. But I feel really bad for Atlanta. You noticed that Donald Glover had his Teddy Perkins get up on in the crowd when he was sitting down. Like, what a waste! What a waste!
Yeah.
It was this year. Atlanta was very challenging, really interesting artistically. But when I was thinking today, it's like, is this too much for Emmy voters?
Yeah.
And because it's really reaching into another area entirely, which is not the funny. And Emmy voters tend to respond to the funny in comedy series.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Like, it might not even be too much, but it might just be Mrs. Maisel was a funnier show. And, you said it yourself, Tom, when you're voting and you're judging the Emmys, that you're like, part of you's looking for something that makes you laugh in the comedy category, something that's funny. And I think that's been, I think, a hurdle not just for Atlanta, but also for shows like Transparent in the past as well, that just haven't tugged on that funny bone enough. And it's also sometimes, I think, like, you look at some of the upsets we've had in comedy races with Julia Louis-Dreyfus for The New Adventures of Old Christine, and Mike and Molly, Melissa McCarthy, and John Cryer for 2.5 Men. Like, I don't necessarily find all those performances particularly hilarious myself, but they are pure comedy performances. And I do think, and I think Bill Hader's isn't in Barry, though. Bill Hader's is very, very dark and dramatic, but maybe the fact that they know how funny he is, that he can get away with it.
Yeah, they see him as fun.
Yeah, they know he can do that. They know he's a funny guy. And maybe he can get some more comedic credit. Although with Donald Glover on Community, they should know that too. Although maybe less Academy voters watch Community than Bill Hader on Saturday Night Live.
Well, bad on the Academy voters, because Community was brilliant.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Particularly those first about 2 or 3 seasons.
Oh, yes.
Yes. But, so Bill Hader. So who else is joining us on the panel? I'll invite them in now. I've lost my list. It was, you know who you are. The other people on our panel, come on in. It is Charles, Riley, and Tony, and obviously our chief, our boss, head honcho, Tom O'Neill. Join whenever you want. He's always welcome. Plus, I guess if anyone of the Marcus or Chris or Daniel or any of the people that are around looking at Emmy stuff, feel free to join in if they want. Here we go. Rob, do you have any last thoughts for us?
No, it's just another very exciting Emmy season comes to an end for all of us. It was really great, a good show. I wish it was a little bit more entertaining, but I'm very happy with the winners. And yeah, and until next time, I suppose.
Yeah, very good. And Tom?
I agree with Rob on that. I mean, the race was great. The show was okay, but that's okay. That's fine. We move on, and we'll have this next year.
Next year. On what network next year? What network's getting next year?
Yes. All right.
Fox.
Okay.
So, yeah, who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen there.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Have fun, everybody.
Okay. Charles, we'll open with you. What would you like to share with us?
This is the Emmys I've been missing for the past couple of years. You know, we haven't, ever since they changed the voting system, we've seen really, sweeps. And what was interesting about the old voting system is that you would get different winners sort of all over the place. And it wasn't so much on the comedy side this year, but on the drama side and even the movie mini, we had interesting winners that caught a lot of us off guard, but we're not completely out of the realm for what we were thinking. I thought it was fun. It was a fun ceremony to watch.
Yeah, there were a lot of doubles, a lot of like Barry 1-2, Godless 1-2, The Crown 1-2, The Americans 1-2, Game of Thrones 1-2. Yeah, there are a lot of just double winners tonight.
And I was especially satisfied with my predictions because even with the exception of 3 categories, all the categories where I didn't have the winner predicted, I had them in second.
Oh, you did better than me. It's funny. My predictions is a tale of two cities. We've got comedy. I got 7 for 7, and drama. I got 0 for 7.
Oh God!
All the drama wrong, all the comedy right tonight. So.
Oh man.
So I was feeling really good after that first segment of the show. I was like, oh, here we go.
I also just gotta say, John Mulaney, man. I don't know if I had him the highest up. Someone was probably predicting him, but I had him in third, and I was very, very happy for him. That special, if you haven't seen it, Kid Gorgeous at Radio City, it's fantastic.
If you'd said to me 3 months ago or 4 months ago, those would be the 5 nominees, those things, I would have said, oh, John Mulaney's winning. He's the hot buzz guy, and I followed the flock a bit. No one else was predicting him. I thought, no, I must be crazy, and also, some of the it was a competitive category, but he does fit. He reminds me a bit of even when Patton Oswalt won a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a beloved. Now I know Patton Oswalt had a narrative that was a bit different, but. Beloved comics.
Well, I mean, you heard it when Aziz Ansari opened that envelope and he said the Emmy goes to the nicest guy, Patton Oswalt. He's someone who does have a very good reputation, and as someone who had done a lot of acting gigs on different sitcoms, that definitely helped for his reputation as well.
So, long story short, John Mulaney should have been higher on everyone's list. Really,
yes.
Other than maybe yours, Charles. He should have been higher on yours too, I guess. He should have been.
Yeah, no, he absolutely should have been.
Yes, the winner should have been at the top of everyone's list. Tony, do you want to give us some of your thoughts of the evening? Some of your takeaways?
Oh, man. It's funny. After the first 10 minutes of the show, I thought, oh, God, this is just going to be a slog. Because I thought the opening number was I thought that the monologue at the beginning was it was okay. It was safe. It was a safe monologue. It was like, don't go too hard here. And even after the first couple of categories where they're, announcing the nominees before they bring out the presenters, I was like, this is kind of weird. But as the night went on, there was a momentum to the evening. There was and the winners gave, I thought, by and large, really great speeches. I thought that, Winkler was going to come out and do his speech, which was fantastic, and then it was going to all be downhill from there. But there was consistently just really strong, heartfelt speeches. And I thought some of the bits towards the middle, I thought the reparations Emmy, I could see that being devices. I thought it was inspired. And proof that Bryan Cranston, all he has to do is show his face and he's funny. I thought that some of the presenters were really, really strong. I want to see RuPaul and Leslie Jones host everything from here on out. They were amazing. As far as some negatives, you guys have already talked about the Fred Armisen thing, Maya Rudolph thing. What the hell was that? A note to presenters: learn the names of the people. This is their big moment. Alex Borstein and Tracy Morgan doesn't know her name, and Rachel Brosnahan, the first time in 7 years that somebody other than Julia Louis-Dreyfus wins this award. And you've got Tiffany Haddish. Okay, we're used to her mispronouncing names. They had her read the Oscar nominees, and that was a cluster. But Angela Bassett, they mispronounced her name twice. And I'm like, no, stop that. Ingenue Merritt Wever.
Wever, yeah, Merritt Wever.
It's things like that that just bother me. I could hear Chris Beecham screaming in my ear when Elizabeth Moss and Samira Wiley are presenting supporting actress to 3 Handmaids actresses, and none of them won. But I thought, I think the pace was almost too good, because towards the end of the evening, you could see them taking more and more commercial breaks. So the momentum, I thought it was a really, really strong show. I actually think that they could have gone without hosts and the show would have been just fine.
I also wondered, and the opening number made me think of this, if it could have been good for them to play it more like a Saturday Night Live, big Saturday Night Live episode where they just have a cast. So, you've got a bit of an opening number with Leslie Jones and Kenan Thompson. Then maybe you've got a bit where then you have behind the, the Weekend Update guys make a few zingers behind the desk. Then you might have, Fred Armisen and Bill Hader do a sketch a bit later in the show. I don't know, just some why not make it just a supersized sort of Saturday Night Live type thing and not have hosts, but just have the cast.
And I'm kicking myself because in terms of there were predictions that I changed yesterday. I buckled to the pressure and I moved Game of Thrones out of drama series, and I buckled to the pressure and I moved Claire Foy out of actress, and I'm kicking myself for those ones. But I could not have been happier to be wrong in certain places. Claire Foy's win, that was the one I leaped out of my chair. Because not only is she so good on that show, but her episode was astonishingly good.
Yeah. No. So, it was fantastic. She was such a deserving winner. I was so happy for Claire Foy. It's also, for those who don't know, that's her last season on The Crown, even though the show's continuing. They're recasting the whole thing because it's set in the future. Well, the future is still set in our past, but it's set a bit later in time. So, that was a farewell win for Claire Foy, and that made it. I think if it wasn't her last season on the show, I wouldn't have been as happy, but I was sort of really happy because I think that was such a good performance for 2 seasons. And I think she probably would have won it last year if you didn't have The Handmaid's Tale come in at the sort of late in the season with such a strong amount of momentum and show behind it. Riley has joined us. Riley, what's your big takeaway from the night?
Yeah, I was really happy to be wrong in several categories. But I'll just say I really liked the show. Not just for the winners, but I love how they would start announcing the nominees while people were coming to the stage. So everything moved along very quickly, and they had clips for pretty much every category, which is amazing.
Yeah. No, it's great. They could usually with the Emmys or Oscars even, they somehow have like clips for the first two categories, and then that is cut almost. So it's sort of weird that you see a lot of a supporting actor in a drama series or something, and then none of any of the lead sort of people. So
or there was one year where they only showed clips in lead actor, and that was it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, they skipped them for talk series, so I think they were, starting to run behind there. But yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. What do you think? Let's quickly talk about the limited series races. It was a great night for Versace. They won 3 Emmys. They won for Best Limited Series. Darren Criss won for Lead Actor, and it won Directing. Ryan Murphy. So, was this a good night? Because I know it was in some other acting categories. I would say it did probably slightly better than expected because a lot of people had it director going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it was a good night. It was definitely a good night for them. I mean, they took the top category, and they also claimed a lead category and directing. That's a solid, and that goes on top of how many wins did they have last week? 3 or 4?
Let's check the board.
4. Yeah.
Check the 4. So
7.
Yeah, so to go away with 7, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's just one behind Maisel and SNL.
And Ryan Murphy's second individual directing Emmy. A lot of people thought that he, was a little bit overexposed, and that because of that wasn't gonna win directing. So
he kept on losing out in all these other races, especially in movie Mini.
And he looked shocked. He looked stunned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was kind of cursed at this point. I mean, it was his 5th consecutive nomination. He's been nominated the last 5 years for a variety of projects that have variably won the program categories. So I'm thrilled that he, finally got it again. And I love that Darren Criss was the one who got an acting award for Versace, like if someone was going to get an award for that show. And I really loved the logic that we saw kind of across the Emmys this year. In similar scenarios, like it wasn't Matt Smith who was winning for The Crown; it was Claire Foy. It wasn't just Henry Winkler winning for Barry; it was actually Barry himself. Bill Hader took it, and even for Godless, Jeff Daniels and Merritt Weaver, they were the best parts of it. I feel like we saw that over and over again.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is interesting. Like, it's now is the American Crime Story the real sort of like danger in the limited series category. O.J. Simpson won Best Series. Now Versace's won Best Series. It seems like that. Because it's funny, American Horror Story kept on getting nominated and never was able to win that limited series category. And now American Crime Story comes along and it's won its 2 outings. And, Fargo was only able to win this race once. So of all those sort of, what are they called? Serialized sort of
anthologies.
Anthologies, thank you. Of all the anthologies, American Crime Story is the one that's sort of done the best at the Emmys.
And now Ryan Murphy has one job from yours truly, and that is to write something that will get Judith Light her Emmy.
Second.
I command it. I require it. It must happen.
Yeah. So there you go. Limited series. Black Mirror was able to win the writing again this year. That was cool. And Godless picked up 2 acting wins, which was really nice. For great, like they were great performances by Merritt Weaver and Jeff Daniels. Okay.
That was better. That was better. That was better than Merritt Weber.
Yeah. I will never. I will try to never present at the Emmys because I feel like you guys will just get mad at me for saying it.
I have like a twitch when it happens, so I'm like,
I'll be spending
don't do that.
If I ever present at the Emmys, I will be spending a full week practicing all those names.
What about
And
Rachel
you'll still
Brosnahan?
screw it
That
up.
was a bad one, eh?
Oh,
Yeah.
that just made me crazy. I'm like, really? I mean, Tiffany, like I said, Tiffany Haddish, used to you mispronouncing things. Angela Bassett? Really?
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
the one name you should have learned if you're going to be presenting that category.
Yeah. Another name that all presenters should learn in the future at the Emmy Awards is Regina King, because there's a good chance they'll have to say that one. That was probably the biggest upset in all the mini limited series categories. Part of me was a bit sad because with all the Godless wins, I was sort of going, oh, it'd be nice if Michelle Dockery finally won because she was so good in that. But Regina King, very, very deserved as well.
I had switched to before the ceremony. I had Game of Thrones, switched it out for The Handmaid's Tale, and also in that category I had Laura Dern in there, and then I switched it out for Michelle Dockery. And after both Merritt Wever and Jeff Daniels won, I was feeling really good about that.
I was too, because I've had Dockery in since the nominations came out.
Did you all see the comment that I sent you? I think it was after lead actor and actress in a drama series. I sent this comment to all of you saying, "So dot 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 dot. How y'all feel about drama series?"
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that, going into the drama series category, it was still, or, maybe it became like a 4-horse race. Like, when have we seen that before?
I thought at that point, I thought it was a 2-horse race between The Crown and The Americans.
Okay.
I thought because it had been so divided that Game of Thrones probably had the edge at that point. But yeah, it was like if they'd said The Crown, if they'd said The Americans, if they'd said The Handmaid's Tale, I wouldn't have been shocked. I still thought probably The Handmaid's Tale or the Game of Thrones were the two most likely winners just because they had both won in that category before.
Right. Before, it was funny, before going into tonight, I assumed it was going to be Game of Thrones versus The Handmaid's Tale. And I stupidly switched to The Handmaid's Tale when I've had Game of Thrones since the nominations. But then as the night went on and The Handmaid's Tale kept losing and losing and losing and losing, I thought, okay, so it's going to be Game of Thrones versus who? And I thought it was Game of Thrones versus The Crown. I didn't see the Americans. I didn't see the Americans winning drama series, even though I predicted them for actor and writing. But I didn't think that it had enough widespread support to win drama. Whereas and Kenan Thompson took forever to open that envelope. I was like, open it, and
I was expecting him because I was expecting it to be The Crown or The Americans, and so I was waiting for him to say and then when he said Game of Thrones, I was like, that just threw me off.
Yeah.
Have you guys talked about why was it Kenan Thompson?
I was wondering that too.
I was wondering that myself.
Lorne Michaels is why it was Kenan Thompson, right?
I mean, I understand Will Ferrell's doing comedy series.
Yeah,
I understand. Go on.
No, I was curious. I was like, really, Kenan Thompson? I wonder if they had somebody else lined up to do that and something fell through.
Could be. Like, Kenan Thompson opened the show with Kate McKinnon as well, so maybe it was like bookending the evening or something like that. It was a bizarre choice. I didn't hate it, but a bit of a head scratcher. The funny thing is, with The Crown doing so well with directing and lead actress and stuff like that, because on one of our web chats last week or whatever, I was somewhat critical of the episodes they had chosen to submit, because I thought the best episode of The Crown was an episode that they didn't submit for. But no, they won for these other episodes.
See, Matt, when you started talking about chats that we did last week, I thought you were going to mention how, I said that Game of Thrones would not be winning another Emmy this year.
Yes, you did say that, Riley. So what happened? How do you explain the result?
How do you explain your wrongness?
See, it's crazy because they announced the first 4 drama categories, the 2 supporting and writing and directing. and I actually got 3 out of 4. But the one I missed, Peter Dinklage, I had in 5th place. So I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, you got a Game of Thrones blind spot this year, Riley.
And it's funny because I had Dinklage from the beginning, but I was questioning myself because of something Daniel had brought up to me, was that, you know, Dinklage has never won when he's competed against somebody else in his category. And so I was like, no, I'm not going to change Dinklage. I wish I had followed my own advice on the other ones. But it's just, I think we have learned a couple of things from this. And that is, you know, The Handmaid's Tale, as many nominations as it got, it was still a divisive season. This was a season that was not beloved by everybody.
Well, that's actually what I was telling Tom O'Neill in the pre-show chat. I was saying to him that I watched the first 3 episodes, and after that 3rd episode where she's captured, I just said to myself, I don't know if I can do this anymore, because you know what's going to happen to her is going to be absolutely horrible and miserable. And I just didn't know if I still haven't watched the rest of the season, which is why I had Game of Thrones in for so long.
And I think, and you're right, the end of season 2 of The Handmaid's Tale was divisive. I had friends that were texting me going, what? When they were watching the final. So,
but there was also some, there were hints of this even early in the season. There was a lot of, I started seeing a lot of think pieces in things like the New York Times and Variety that was basically calling The Handmaid's Tale that it was veering into being too depressing. The word torture porn was starting to be thrown around. And so I think the backlash to it started much earlier than before the end of the season, because there were a lot of people, including Charlie, including myself. I checked out after episode 2 because I just couldn't handle it. So, and then you look at conversely on the comedy side, you look at something like Atlanta. We should have been asking ourselves more, you know, this Atlanta's an incredible artistic achievement, but does everybody get it? Does everybody get it? And do enough people get it to put it over something that's more mainstream like Maisel?
But at least we did have with Atlanta, we had 2 wins last season and a huge uptick in nominations, which I think justified at least that sort of mindset of thinking that it might win something. And just one other thing, I mean, how shocked were you when you saw Teddy Perkins in that audience?
It's so funny. I didn't even see it until Bill Hader won. That's the first time I saw it.
I didn't either. Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, which, and you know, and that was what was so great about tonight. There were so many genuinely surprised winners, and I love that, even when it throws my predictions to shit. And
it's the weirdest thing, because I was rooting personally for Bill Hader in that category.
So was I.
When I saw Glover in the audience as Teddy Perkins, all I was thinking to myself was, oh man, I would have loved to have seen that acceptance speech.
And I know this was talked about a bit beforehand, like in the lead up to the Emmys, but we don't know how big a role tapes play. As acclaimed as that Teddy Perkins episode was, on one level, I didn't know it was Donald Glover till people were talking about it being his Emmy submission, which speaks to his great performance, but also speaks to there might have been voters who watched that episode and didn't realize it was him.
Yeah, because at the end of the episode it says featuring Teddy Perkins as himself.
As himself.
Yeah.
And look, to be honest, not everyone even reads the credits.
That's true.
You know, because I was actually I was watching some of it with my mum. I was like, oh, let's check out Atlanta. You haven't seen that show. It's going to get nominated.
Oh my God, you watched that with your mother?
I watched the Teddy Perkins episode, and I'm like, she's like, who's the main guy? And I was like, I don't think he's even in this episode.
It does make me a little sad though that Teddy Perkins was this insanely well received, justifiably well received episode of not just episode of Atlanta, but episode of television this year, and that it walked away with nothing this year. That kind of made me sad.
Yeah, no, that is a shame because it is a really good episode. But it's interesting. Maybe, the problem with Handmaids and the problem with Atlanta, maybe those are shows that make you more uncomfortable than the other alternates.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's funny that we're thinking of, Game of Thrones is the show that makes you feel comfortable. Like, Game. That's the uplifting one that makes Emmy voters feel good about.
That's almost similar to what I thought was Colin Jost's best joke of the night when he talks about Roseanne moving to Israel and saying you have to. Isn't it ironic that you have to move to the Middle East to find peace of mind? Which I thought was actually quite a brilliant joke.
That's a good line. I was glad with the ceremony though that with getting back to Che and Jost, they didn't bomb. It was like nothing. I didn't feel like anything landed insanely well, but nothing bombed. And at least, with the exception of the Maya Rudolph and Fred Armisen bits, actually, I thought the show was very well done. I thought the In Memoriam segment was one of, if not
fantastic.
If not the best I have ever seen. That was beautifully put together. I was very disappointed though in that 70th anniversary montage that was just so hastily put together. It just felt like it was like an 8th grade AV project. It was so rushed, and if you had cut out those Maya and Fred bits, you probably could have had a pretty decent clip package there.
Yeah, this will sound a bit like probably a backhanded compliment, but it was a really competent hosting job. This was not the shocking awards that we saw in the past when you had someone like Ryan Seacrest host it or the reality show host. Like, they delivered their lines well. There were some good singers in there. Nothing particularly amazing or memorable, but it was a competent hosting job. And to be honest, it's not like I am going back to, oh boy, the year Seth Meyers hosted was so much better. Mm-hmm. Who was the last NBC host of the show.
I will also say I was very much had low expectations for this, but I was actually fairly surprised in how they did the animation presenting of Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah, I thought of you for that whole segment, Charlie.
Because we've seen at the Oscars, animated presenters do not work usually. It's so hard to watch. But they stay true to the humor of the show, which was, I think, paramount to that. And they didn't drag it out too long. It was very quick, and it was very well done, to the point. And I was very happy with that. I chuckled several times during it.
And there would have been quite a few people at the Emmys, or not in the audience, but I mean watching at home, who probably haven't heard of Rick and Morty.
I'm betting a good size of that auditorium probably hadn't heard of Rick and Morty.
It was a fairly niche anime. Usually you have a pretty big star come out when they get a cartoon out. I think the only ones I can remember at the Emmys has been because they do it more at the Oscars, but the other ones I can remember is Stewie and Brian from Family Guy.
They did the opening number in 2007. The Simpsons presented, I think the first time Ted Danson won for lead actor in a comedy. The Simpsons were the ones that presented that.
Huh. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Riley, let me ask you. You're kind of our history buff and looking at all the trends and stuff like that. Tell us through your crystal ball. What did you gauge from this? What did you gauge from this year's Emmys?
Well, I liked how the casting awards really lined up with the directing awards. I thought that was kind of fun. Maybe they're not lining up so much with series anymore, but they do have some correlation to the main telecast. And I feel like we actually saw vote splitting pop up a few places. that maybe isn't entirely obvious. Like, just judging by the amount of applause that Milo Ventimiglia got, for lead actor, I suspect that, it would have been This Is Us had the two of them not been nominated and had the two of them not had such claims to the award. And also, with Game of Thrones taking drama series ultimately, I don't see how that wasn't another vote splitting scenario.
Yeah, but then again, we on the other side of the coin, we have Peter Dinklage was able to win, even though Nikolai got nominated. Now we know that, like, even from the applause in the room, you can tell that Peter Dinklage is really the Academy darling. Like, it's interesting. The Handmaid's Tale, we said this was going to be a big bellwether for split voting the supporting actress race, which I do think played a role. At the same time, Handmaid's Tale didn't win its categories where there wasn't vote splitting at play. So that's a bit harder to tell than if, like, Handmaid's had won, like if Elizabeth Moss had won, but the supporting actress didn't, where you go, well, it's probably vote splitting for supporting. But
like, it never lost to Westworld, though.
Yes, that is true. The fact that Tanya Newton one might suggest that more than if it had been like Lena Headey that had won. You might go, oh, maybe just Game of Thrones is a more popular show. Yeah,
I feel like those guest winners last week really threw us off. Like Samira Wiley over Diana Rigg. Now I don't know what that was about, or Cat Williams beating SNL, but Marvelous Mrs. Maisel couldn't.
And Ron Cephas Jones gave me more confidence in my Sterling K. Brown pick. Well, and I think this is not the first time when the guest winners haven't really reflected the supporting winners. I remember for a couple of years it was, oh my gosh, Saturday Night Live people have won guest actor, they're going to win supporting this year, and that eventually happened with Kate McKinnon. But
it's just last year they matched up so well. So
yeah.
We have to remember we're still in really the relative infancy of this new voting system. So I think there's still trends that we haven't seen, and maybe I just love the fact that there were so many unpredictable winners and that it was a real race. I mean, I was never bored for a second during the show, except during Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph.
Yeah.
Even then, it wasn't boredom. It was more like watching a train wreck.
Yeah.
A very slow train wreck.
Salad eating train wreck.
Yeah. I was going to say, in the chat room, they're talking a bit about drama series next year, and JT GAP is saying how Big Little Lies could be a contender next year for drama series. So that is something.
It has to compete in drama series next year?
Probably.
Yeah,
it's got some
it has
characters,
to.
right? I don't think they'd be allowed to compete in the...
Yeah, it has to.
Oh, yeah, because it's the same cast. Yeah.
Like Downton Abbey, they'll be crossing over, and boy, like, if something could beat Game of Thrones, if Game of Thrones is a good year, it could be Big Little Lies with Meryl Streep in the cast, and so look out for that one. Yeah,
I would also say what's really interesting, and this is so typical of Gold Derby people like us, is that we're thinking about next year's Emmys already. There's so many factors that figure into next year because not only with Game of Thrones final season, The Crown is going to come back with momentum, provided that the new season and the new cast, it's only going to be like almost an entirely new show. We don't know what that's going to do. We have Matt Weiner's new series, The Romanovs, which showed a preview during the Emmy telecast that could be really interesting. We know his pedigree, and it's on Amazon.
Is that a comedy or a drama? That's the thing I can't figure out from that preview.
I can't figure that out either.
I thought it was an anthology.
I heard it was a sketch series. Is it going to be in the... So
I heard it was Kabuki.
Yeah. The funny thing is, here's my bold in the future prediction: The Crown will win Best Drama Series for season 5. That's my call.
Okay.
The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad will win its first for its 5th season, and Meryl Streep will win lead actress that year for it. There you go. I'm calling it.
Take it to the bank.
I've been saying for months that no matter what happens this year, whether The Handmaid's Tale wins or Game of Thrones wins, Game of Thrones is definitely winning next year, and The Handmaid's Tale is never winning again. So I'm surprised by how much Game of Thrones, how strong it is. When it hasn't been on for a year, when it's not coming back for another year, kind of, and it's getting this random win for Peter Dinklage. Like that show is really strong. I don't see how it doesn't sweep next year.
Well, I mean, the same thing sort of happened with Breaking Bad after it won its first series. Because remember, I think it was like a week or two after it won its first series Emmy in 2014 or in 2013, you had the finale air, and of course, all of us at Gold Derby were going apeshit over it, as was justified, and I was one of those people saying, "All right, it's over for next year."
Well, we were saying that, and I remember the week that the Emmys aired that year that Breaking Bad won for its 5th season. That was the week that Ozymandias, that episode came out, and we were all talking.
It was the week before that.
Yeah,
because they made sure not to air a new episode when they were winning at the Emmys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. So so it's going to be interesting looking down the pipeline. Is there? Let's see. With anyone? Oh, someone's asking in the chat room if Modern Family will return. They think so, maybe for a final season or something.
No.
And I do not think so.
Unless there's this plateau of eligible entries, and it might just return in by default the 2 sweetest words in the English language. But I have a very hard time seeing it coming back, especially after it took so long for it to get out of the race. It had gotten to the point where you'd have it nominated and then like 2 or 3 other awards, and every time it was nominated, you just heard groans.
Do you think that did any of you think that when Bill Hader won for Barry that they could perhaps take out comedy series?
No, because once Maisel won both writing and directing, I was like, okay. But I do think that this gives that series some real heft going into its subsequent seasons. We could see both Hader and Winkler repeat.
The one thing that gave me a bit of pause when he won and they were on 2 wins and Atlanta hadn't won anything, I thought, boy, you've got an Amazon show, Mrs. Maisel. Amazon's never won a series award sort of thing before. It probably doesn't have as much viewership and things. And you've got an FX show. And then Barry, it's a HBO show, and it's sort of it's having a good night. I wondered if the strength of HBO could maybe get it across. But I still was pretty confident that Mrs. Maisel was winning. But it did make me question what the alternate was to Maisel.
No, but when Hader won actor, at that point I was saying to myself, okay, this is obviously between Maisel and Barry, not Maisel and Atlanta.
Although, I would imagine that I'd imagine Atlanta and Barry probably got close on the votes, I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I was very I was sad that we didn't get to see Teddy Perkins up on stage, but I was very happy Bill Hader was able to win. That was really cool. That was my, I think, earliest prediction of the year that he would win. I predicted that.
You predicted that after the pilot.
After the pilot, yeah. I think I predicted it maybe the day, like a day or 2 before the pilot, but I watched the pilot before writing an article predicting it.
That's I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Oh no, John.
It's late.
So I was very excited that was made me very happy when Bill Hader won. I was like, I was right, and it's a great performance. And he spoke with us at Gold Derby, and I'm not sure how many of the other lead actors spoke with us this year at Gold Derby. Lead actors in a comedy. Donald Glover didn't, right?
Ted Danson, I don't think did.
He didn't. He spoke to us, I think, maybe for the Golden Globes, or he spoke to us last year or something. So, But
None
no,
of the Maisel people did.
no, and I think that was partly due to them shooting their second season while the campaign was happening, so it was harder to schedule times. I know they were interested in talking to us. So there you go. I did speak with Maren Hinkle from Mrs. Maisel, the matriarch of the show, Maisel's mum. But yeah, we didn't get too many interviews with the Maisel people, partly because of their production schedule. No, not many of those lead actors spoke with us, but Bill Hader did. He made the time, so perhaps something that future nominees in lead actor in comedy series can take note of.
Oh, and I meant to say that what I was going to say is that's his second career Emmy. He does have an Emmy for animated program 2009 for South Park. He was a associate, one of the producing team on the show. He wrote with them for a couple seasons. Yeah,
so his second Emmy for Bill Hader, and I'm glad he won an Emmy because he was nominated for so many this year. It's a shame that Donald Glover wasn't able to win one of the 5 or however many he was nominated for. I guess the one good thing is Donald Glover did win for Atlanta last year, so it's not like hasn't won an Emmy for his performance and work on that show.
He's got 2. He's good.
Yeah.
He's got 2. He's got a Grammy earlier this year. He's got the 2 Golden Globes from last year, and I don't think he's even. I don't even know how old is he. Is he like 32 or something?
Possibly. The
something that puts my life accomplishments to shame.
The moviegoer in the chat room says there was Donald Glover fatigue. And James Bromley asked the question: has Stranger Things ever won a major telecast award? And the answer to that question,
no.
Which is a shame. I think that's maybe been the most consistent show of the past 2 seasons.
It's a shame. I thought season 2 was actually better than season 1. I loved season 2 of Stranger Things.
I agree. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I would have voted for it for best drama series if I was voting. So I love Stranger Things season 2. But didn't win.
It's fun seeing those clips pop up in the ceremony because it's just so tonally different.
Yeah. And it's a shame David Harbour wasn't able to win. I think that's one of my big disappointments of tonight. That's such a great supporting performance that he's done on both seasons. I thought he was particularly strong in season 2, and such a great character, Sheriff Hopper, and he gets to do fun, actiony sort of things, but he's also got some real great emotional depth and range there. And hopefully he'll win it. I feel almost a bit like, hope he doesn't fall into that, Jonathan Banks slot where he sort of gets nominated a bit but never ends up taking it out.
Yeah, he's in there.
That would break my heart.
Yeah, he's so good.
I think the loss that bothered me the most was probably actually same category, different nominee, and that was Matt Smith. I would have loved to have seen Vanessa Kirby, but I thought she had much stiffer competition. But Matt Smith. And Claire Foy has pointed it out in every acceptance speech he's ever given. Part of the success of Claire Foy on that show is because of Matt Smith. So I really hope to see more of him and hopefully see him back here again.
Yeah. The moviegoers asked for us to comment on the Handmaid's actresses handing the Emmy to Tandy Newton. Yes. What was going on there?
Shame.
That was so
just like I think you said it, Tony, or I can't remember who said it, but when we saw them come out for the supporting actress category, we could hear Chris in our heads. We could hear our editor, Chris Beecham, and he's absolutely right about this, that it is annoying. Because it's either like, they're setting them up to give it to their co-star, or they're setting them up to look disappointed. So it was, at least Samira Wiley looked very happy for Tandy Newton, I will say.
I don't know. She didn't scream when she opened the envelope, though. So as soon as that happened, you're like,
well, that was Leslie Jones who did that. That is a whole other bar to clear. But it still was kind of annoying. It's like you couldn't have picked anybody else. You couldn't have found any other thing for them to present.
And while we're on the subject of bad presenting, Queer Eye people, I love you. No presenting best drama actor and trying to give them makeovers. No, 9 yet. Don't do it.
Thumbs up for me.
Oh God, I hated that. Every second of it. I was like, oh, stop it. No, stop it.
And I think like, so we often have, it's very annoying when they have people from a show reading out the nominees and presenting the winner to someone from that show, or at least a category they're in. It's very, like, I thought it was quite bizarre for that one, particularly because I first saw Samara Wiley and I'm going, oh, this is a weird category to have. And then I went, wait, it's Elizabeth Moss as well. Why did they put two handmaids? Like, it was so bizarre. It wasn't even a like, oh, well, we want this guy to present this category and he'd go well with Samira Wiley and, well, who cares? It was like, hey, let's have two people from The Handmaid's Tale present an award. And like, and they handled it pretty well, Elizabeth Moss and Samira Wiley. They didn't start crying or ripping up the envelope or anything. But I can't imagine that they wouldn't have reacted differently if it had been one of the Handmaid's actresses, even if it's just a like bit more of a smile or something. And I couldn't help but get that out of my head when they opened the envelope, was sort of thinking, yeah, I think they would have been more happy if it was one of the others.
Yeah, some producer has been spending too much time in our odds.
Yeah.
I just also want to throw a shout. I will say, a great presenting pair that I was not expecting, that actually I loved, was for variety sketch series, Dave Chappelle and Neil Brennan coming out.
That was great.
That was very special. If you know the history between those two, of course, they were the writers and creators of Chappelle's show. And of course, Dave pulled that whole, dropping out of the show in the middle of filming the third season. And their relationship had been very rocky for years after that, understandably. And I thought it was really cool to see them that was a great bit of presenter casting, I thought.
Yeah. We've got just a few things. Morty says Atlanta got robbed. And the movie talks about presenter, says it wasn't as bad as Brie Larson giving the Oscar to Casey Affleck. So
that was just uncomfortable.
That was uncomfortable.
Hey, what about? I was driving here, but did you guys talk about how Atlanta and The Handmaid's Tale were the Gold Derby front runners, and they were both shut out?
We talked about how they were both shut out. I don't think we mentioned that they were actually the official number one front runners. Yes.
Was Atlanta the front runner, or was Atlanta the front runner on Gold Derby? Oh.
Yeah.
It was, I couldn't remember that because, yes, Maisel and Atlanta was so divided. Jason Nolet does say it was the Robbins season of Atlanta. So
and they were robbed.
They were robbed.
So there you go.
And while we're talking about, there was another category that I had an issue with. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I actually don't want to talk about the loss there. I do want to compliment the producers for the writing category for a miniseries or movie for choosing the very ending of Twin Peaks: The Return as the clip. That made me very happy. I just thought that was great.
Oh, that's good.
A lot of spoilery clips from The Americans as well, I thought.
I muted my TV during them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was some of the clips I missed because I was sort of in the thick of the live blog and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to need to rewatch the Emmys to just catch all the little audience shots and what clips they used and things like that.
Kudos to you for keeping that live blog going. That's a tough job.
Yeah, it was fun. Like it's fun to do, and it keeps you focused on the Emmys. But it's a good. You can still read the live blog at goldderby.com and read all the comments that were sent through from our editors live. Just seeing if there's any more chat things in the chat room. No, we might. TJ Steakhouse is said if O couldn't win, they're glad it was Foy, and I do think that Killing Eve, if it has a good second season, will be very much in the thick of the Emmys and could even build on its first season.
New showrunner though.
What? Sorry?
I said Phoebe Waller-Bridge is not returning as showrunner.
Oh, isn't she? Oh, that could be an issue.
But
Okay.
yeah, Sandra Oh got a lot of screen time.
People love their Sandra Oh, and one of them, like, she never won for Grey's Anatomy. She's one of the most overdue people that we sort of have in the lineup. Julia Lorna said Twin Peaks 1-0, so that's a nice reminder for you, Charles.
Thank you very much for that, rubbing alcohol in the wound.
So there we go.
But that's the thing; it helps it heal, and that's what I'm about: healing.
The healing. Let the healing process begin. I thought a good Emmys. Any last thoughts, Charles?
It was, as I said, I just want to bring it back to this. This is the type of Emmys, at least on the drama side, that I missed for the past, couple of years, where we've had these sweeps happen. So to have this kind of unpredictability was really refreshing and kept it exciting. And overall, I think overall it's going to be a positive one, specifically with the winners, to look back on.
Riley.
Yeah, I felt so beaten down by The Handmaid's Tale and This Is Us and Veep and The Voice over the last couple of years. And I love these Emmys. I thought that we had amazing upsets, amazing winners, people that I was kind of iffy on their chances actually coming through, like Alex Borstein and Tandy Newton and Claire Foy and Ryan Murphy. Well done.
Yeah. Tony.
Yeah, I echo that. What I love is that on not a single category did I think about the winner and go, how did they win? I feel like all the winners were completely deserving. And I just want to share our own Marcus Dixon was actually in the audience at the Emmys this year, and his comment was simply best Emmys ever. So apparently it went over very well in the audience.
Wait,
I feel like I agree with that. Even though I don't agree with the series winners.
He got to be at the Emmys, or because he liked the winners?
I don't know. I'm just sharing information.
Okay.
Well, he did send us an email saying that when the whole Glenn Weiss thing happened, by the way, how great was that?
Oh, we haven't talked about that at all. We need to talk about that for a second.
Holy God, that was
Very
the jaw-dropping moment of the evening. Here's a guy who has directed so many of the greatest awards moments, because he hasn't just directed the Oscars, he's directed the Tony Awards, he's directed the Emmys, he's won for directing the Oscars while he was directing the Emmys. And here he is making one of those great moments on stage. You couldn't help feel warm and fuzzy just watching it.
Yeah, and he's wanting to. I think he was auditioning to direct The Bachelor. So
do not sully his name with such filth.
No, it's a lovely.
But how and so perfect. I was like, because I was wondering, oh, we're gonna get us. It was so perfectly directed. It was like, sad mention of the mother's passing, and then 180 proposing with the mother's ring. I'm like, okay.
Good writing too.
Well, like, why
I love that he said to his siblings, "I didn't swipe it."
It was perfect. Everything about it was perfect.
It was a wonderful moment. It's the kind of thing, and I think Zach Laws sent us a good comment during the I think made it into the live blog, is note to Academy what you risk by putting some categories in the commercial breaks, and I for the Film Academy, who have announced that next year they're going to be putting some of the categories in the commercial breaks. Now, the Academy would come back to us and say, well, what we do is if anything good happens, we'll play it after we have a section we're going to play those still. We can just edit it down. But there's something about award shows, watching things happen live in front of you. And I can guarantee you, if this was the Oscars, they'd made the same decision of the Oscars, this probably would have been one of the categories that would have been in the commercial breaks, and it was the moment of the night. Mm-hmm. And sort of as boring as the speeches can be, it's also the speeches and the announcing of the winners that provide the evening with its moments of spontaneity, and its unscripted moments. And boy, you're risking a lot to put that in a commercial break as an award show, which can often seem quite scripted and dry regardless. So I do think that's something the community said. It's often the short film winners that sometimes give the best speeches of the night, because they're these young kids who have never been to a night like this. They've never worked in the industry before, some of them. They're at this big event and they're all of a sudden an Oscar winner in front of some of their favorite movie stars and directors and things, and they're just like delirious.
Yeah, you had one of the best lines ever at the Oscars. I think it was in the mid-90s. You had this, I think the woman won for documentary short subject, and she was so much in shock. She said, "You know you're at the Oscars when your dress costs more than your movie."
Yeah. So I don't know. I sort of completely agree with Zach's comment there that, you know, because that was such a good moment. It was probably for me, Winkler winning was the moment of the night. But second would be The Proposal.
Yeah, that's going to be the image in the newspapers tomorrow.
Yeah. And makes the Emmys relevant. There'll be people who are interested in that story that weren't interested like we are in all the other stuff to do with the Emmys, and keeps them on the radar. Yeah.
It's one of those things where, you know, at the end of the year, when we have our, you know, when we look back at the year and you have, you know, like Time Magazine will put out their year in review issue. You know, at the end of last year, the picture on the stage of the Oscars was definitely in everyone's thing. This year, it's going to be That Proposal. Yeah,
it was great. Someone, GT Gap has said it's hilarious that Netflix still hasn't found a way to win a series Emmy. I think
they did win the lead acting Emmy, so with Regina King. So that was good. And with Claire Foy.
Yeah, they're gonna win one day. It's just, I think, more a question of when. I think one problem, particularly last year, they had was they just had 3 series, or like this, not splitting the vote, but you know. Last year, there was a real benefit to Hulu pouring all their campaign efforts into The Handmaid's Tale. They weren't splitting their campaign and what they were pushing and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, people are like, oh, how did Netflix lose? They had like a $12 million campaign. You're like, well, but if you divide that amongst like 4 shows, like Handmaid's Tale only had a $3 million campaign, but they spent like, $2.9 million of that on The Handmaid's Tale. So,
Netflix can cry into their money.
Yes, exactly. Netflix are doing very well. They'll win one day. They've just been. It's sometimes just. It's a matter of timing and just being in the right year with the right series at the right time. I'm sure House of Cards was close a couple of years, and last year I think, you know, Stranger Things and The Crown. I think, as I said, I think The Crown season 5, Netflix, you've got it. So.
Netflix is doing very well in the program categories at the creative arts, you know, with TV Movie or Queer Eye or Equanimity, etc.
I don't think there's a Netflix bias. I don't think them being on Netflix is what has not led them to win a Best Series Emmy.
Maybe in the first couple of years, but definitely not now. Not when they're rewarding Hulu and Amazon.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, anyway, so... what an Emmys year, guys. It was so much fun. It was great running the Emmy Derby with all of you. There we go. We're done for the year. Charles, you put in a bid for this, didn't you? You put in a bid for the board?
10 Gs. Yes, I did. 10 Gs.
That 10 grand? Is that what you're saying? 10,000?
No, it's 10 grams of dirt from my backyard. That's what you use in Australia, right? For money?
No. We have dirt, but we use it for dirt.
Okay.
So anyway, if you want to put in a bid for the board, and if it's something that I am prepared that I like the sound of, you can have it. So there we go. Big Game of Thrones, big winner. I guess the big stories of tonight, other than The Proposal, which was great, was Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, the big winner. Went up from 3 wins to 8 wins tonight. It won 2 acting awards, writing, directing, and series. And the other big story is Game of Thrones winning its 3rd best drama series winner. Not many shows have won that many drama series awards. Next time I'm reluctant to say next year. Who knows when they'll finally put out those final episodes? But next time they will be chasing the record of 4 drama series wins and trying to equal that. So Game of Thrones and Miss Maisel, the big winners of tonight in the series hunts. And goldderby.com, Oscar Prediction Center is open. Predict your Oscars. Get in the chat room. Start talking about next year's Emmys. And thank you so much for watching. And you can follow us at @GoldDerby at Twitter as well. So there you go. Over and out. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Take care, everyone.